Andy, welcome to Monday Night Lights.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Oh, mate, it's great having you here. Absolutely happy. Now, you've just come back from Havana. Your last trip to Havana was 2019, if I remember correctly.
2020.
What exactly has changed in that
well,
time?
it's been 18 months since I was there. Yeah, it was February 2020. I know it feels like longer, absolutely, but really the main thing that's changed has been the currency changes, where they've got rid of the CUC or the cook, or the the dollar, the currency in Cuba that was fixed to the dollar. So that's gone as of the 1st of January. It's been kind of a hames of it. It's kind of a mess down there. Really strangely, the average Cuban is having a much more difficult time of it, but some things have got much cheaper for tourists. If you're not careful as a tourist, some things could get much more expensive. But there's an official rate of the local peso, as it's called, which used to be called the CUP. It's still sometimes called the CUP, but it's called the peso down there. And the official rate is 25 to a US dollar, which was the old rate to the CUC. And it's about 28 to the euro. That kind of varies depending how the euro is doing against the dollar. But on the street or from friends, you can get between 83 and all the way up to 90 for a euro. That's 90 pesos to a euro, or about 70 pesos to the US dollar. And that's been the main change.
If you head into the airport and you get, like, I know most of my mates will get change at the airport straight up. Yeah, they'll go change some bills at Jose Marti. You're going to get 25 to 1 at the airport. You go to any Cadeca, you're going to get 25 to 1.
You get 25 to 1 US dollar. Yeah, that's what you get.
Yeah. So,
and you'll have the most expensive trip.
Effectively, you're way behind the 8 ball before you even start.
Mm-hmm. If you only do things in the hotels, like in the Hotel Nacional, the Hotel Melia Havana, the Hotel Havana Libre, if you only buy food and drink and cigars there, cigars are a bit different because they're still priced in US dollar, which we can come to later, I suppose. But if you only shop in the state-run places, you'll have a very similar experience to what you had before. It'll be similar prices. If you go to any private place, and you'll have the most expensive trip to Cuba that you've ever had. It'll be 4 or 5 times more expensive. For example, if you go to Espacios, we all know Espacios. Most of us on your forum will know the place. That really nice outdoor garden with the chickens running around and the pizza and the drinks and all this. And their pizzas are about 400 pesos. So if you're changing at the 25 pesos to $1, that's going to be $16 for the pizza, which isn't cheap. And that pizza always used to be about 6 CUC, so it's gone from 6 CUC up to $16. But if you change on the street, like for example, or say with a friend, I'm not advising people to change on the street at all, but if you have a friend who will help you change money, and you're getting 85 pesos to the euro, well then it's costing you just less than €5, which is around the same as it used to be. What's really got cheaper though, if you're changing money with a friend at the 85 pesos to €1, and you go to the Hotel Nacional, a beer there is 100 pesos, so it's just over €1. So that's cheaper. And because the beer used to be, well, it had gone up to almost $4 in the Hotel Nacional, which was expensive, but now when you change money with a friend, it's now got very cheap. Some other examples.
How much is a toasted sandwich at the National now, man?
Yeah, the ham and cheese sandwich. Yeah, the famous ham and cheese sandwich, which I had a couple of times when I was there. I have to say, because I was staying around the corner, just up around the corner from the Hotel Capri is where I was staying this time, which was really handy. But I was a 3-minute walk away from the Nacional. But yeah, the ham and cheese sandwich, 150 pesos, which on the official rate is $6, or the 6 CUC, which the sandwich always was. Like I first had one of those 2010, and it was $6 then. But if you so that's $6 is the official rate. But if you change your the money with a friend from euros into pesos, it's just under €2. So that's got much cheaper. What's striking is the price of the Hotel Nacional ashtrays, for example, which are some of the pricier things that any one of us would have bought in the hotels. And they were getting up, the medium-sized ones. Let's see, I have a medium-sized one. I can't hold it up because I have ash in it. I have a medium-sized one here. But those ones were up to about 35 CUC, and they're now 875 pesos. which would be at the official rate $35, but at the friend rate, that's just over €10. So that's got much, much cheaper. And the large ones, the large ones that we're all familiar with, they're 1,250 pesos, which officially is $50. But I got mine for what it actually cost me was about €14.70. So I got a large one and a medium one in total for about €25. So they're about a third the price that they were, which would make sense because that's what I'm changing money for. Um, so some of the hotel stuff, if you change your money wisely, has got much, much cheaper. The rest of the stuff is about the same price. But if you change your money at the Cadeca at the official rate of 25 pesos to $1, if you eat in any of the private places, you'll be hurt. Like we went to Santis. There were about 7 of us, and we had a bill of around 20,000 pesos. If you change your money officially, that's about $800 ish, which is a lot of money in Santis for
How many people?
7. There was a bottle of wine, which I never really do when I'm in Cuba. Normally, I can understand people like wine with their lunch, but in Cuba, generally, you're going to pay extra, and they have very decent beer and rum. But this is the way I look at it. But yeah, so it would be about $800 if you're changing your money officially, which is a huge amount of money for lunch for seven people in Santis. But if you change your money on the street, it's about €30 a head, about €210.
Which is what you
about
expect.
Right. Yeah, which is about right. And it's going to be a 3-hour lunch kind of thing where you have an hour to start with, and you have an hour of food, then an hour of cocktails, beer, wine, and dessert, coffee. And so like a long lunch, a kind of a main meal of the day lunch, would always have been about $30 in Santis, really. You know? So that's about the same price.
So it sounds like sorry, and it sounds like if you know what you're doing, if you've been there before and you've got friends on the ground and you know the ins and outs of how things work, you'll be fine. But if you're a tourist coming in, I'm just thinking of those cruise liners, or just people for the first time heading, you'd be horrified.
Mm-hmm. There are very few cruise ships going into Cuba at the moment. And there are some of the British registered ones are going in. I know there was one going in last week. But yeah, those people changing money, unless they really know what they're doing, if they've looked it up, and most of them, I presume, wouldn't have, they're going to have a very, very expensive time of it. Now, if they only go to the state-run places, and if they go to the cigar shops, it's going to be the same, because the cigar shops charge in US dollars. That's what they'll be paying there. But if they're going to any of the non-state-run restaurants, they're going to have a real shock. But I think most of the cruise ship passengers, I think they put on buses and then they're brought out to the various state-run restaurants, that kind of thing. Anyway, I didn't go to El Aljibe on this trip, but that is a state-owned restaurant, so I presume that'll be a similar price. It was always $12.50 all you can eat chicken there. I presume they'll have a similar conversion rate, so it'll be about, I don't know, what's that, about 300 pesos, 312 pesos or something. It'll be something like that, I'd imagine, in the El Aljibe, because it is state-owned. But all the private places have factored in that inflation. What that means is that it's very, very few Cubans can now go to Espacios. There are always some going, but 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, you go into Espacios and there's almost no tourists. There's some expats, but it's almost all Cubans because they could afford to go there. Now Espacios is 3 to 4 times to 5 times more expensive for the local Cubans than it used to be. Yeah,
I'm assuming it's not as busy either.
Oh, absolutely. There were some nights. There were nights that you go into Espacios, kind of any night of the week, and there's always people out in that back patio. Any night from about kind of 9 p.m. until maybe 2 a.m. There's always people there. But there were some nights, 3 or 4 nights on this trip, on Tuesday and Wednesday nights, where there was nobody, just nobody at all, and the staff standing around. There's nobody at all there, except the people I was with. There were people that I was taking out, and these are Cubans who used to have small businesses, kind of small tour guide businesses, and we'd know some of these people together. We'd know a lot of Cubans who ran little kind of tour companies, who would either know cigars, or they would know farms, or they'd know factories, or they'd have a car, or they'd rent out a car, or they'd have an Airbnb. They were always in a kind of a legal gray area anyway. But the Cuban government earlier this year made it specifically illegal for a Cuban citizen to run a private tour company. So all the tour companies have to be state-run, which means that the state accepts the foreign currency offshore and does the usual, I presume, kind of thing with the.
I think we both got some
foreign
mutual
currency.
friends got caught up in that. Yeah.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, and I've some very good friends who just the only solution they see is really to leave the island. And these are people I would arrive in Cuba and they would have a gift of a bottle of Havana Club Selection de Maestro for me, that kind of stuff. So they had a bit of money, you know. These people had a bit of extra money going around and they were doing well with a little business. And now the people who have cars can't get parts for the cars because of the sanctions and because of the currency issues. There are no tourists because of COVID. They can't run the business legally because of the government changes. They can't afford to eat out because of the currency changes. So unlike the rest of the world where it was just COVID that has hit the tourist industry hard, in Cuba it's at least four things. It's the currency changes, it's COVID, it's making their business specifically illegal, and then that inflation that they've had as well. And because of COVID, that there are no tourists at all. Most of the rest of the world has some tourists coming in, or would have local tourists. Most of the rest of the world, like in Europe, in Ireland, for example, where I am here, we've had very few foreign tourists over the last 18 months, but some parts of the country have been doing very well because the Irish people who would normally go to Spain are going down the country in Ireland and are staying in Irish country hotels. So some parts of Ireland are doing fine, but that doesn't exist. There's a domestic tourism in Cuba doesn't really exist. There's a small amount of it, certainly, but tiny amount.
Right. And if like in Australia, I mean, for this Christmas, accommodation costs have doubled wherever you go on the beach.
Yeah.
You can't get a room. You've got to book a decent restaurant here. It's 6 to 8 weeks in advance if you want to go out.
So where would the Australians normally be going? Bali, Thailand, that kind of place, or?
We're not all bogans, Andy. Some of us go to France.
I was just wondering.
I was just... Yeah. yes, but you are correct. Yeah, Thailand, Bali, Singapore, Hong Kong. I mean, I think Australians certainly we travel. And we're used to traveling. I think we're used to traveling. I mean, you'll find us everywhere. It's like cockroaches. But it's like the Irish. You get Irish and Australians pretty much everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But by being locked up in effect for 2 years, everyone spent their money domestically, and we've seen domestic prices for accommodation, restaurants, demand just go through the roof. That doesn't occur in Cuba. There is no.
There's a tiny amount of it. There is a tiny amount, but it's minuscule. It'd be less than 1% of the average of the average Western country. Way less. There's almost no domestic tourism. There are Cubans who have the money to go to Varadero. There are some, and there are Cubans who'd have the money to go to Cayahutia, and they'd go and rent a little house and say Vinales for a week. There are people doing that, but very, very, very vanishingly few compared to most countries. So all I'm saying is that they don't want to write it off entirely that there is no domestic tourism, but there's almost none. For all intents and purposes,
I think you can
say not at all. No, not at all. No, it's been what's happened over the last year and a half has been catastrophic. Certainly for the small privately owned Cuban tour companies, it's been catastrophic. Absolutely. The people I know, at least off the top of my head, 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 people in Cuba who would have had little tour companies, and for those people, it's been very, very difficult. The only person I know who's doing well, she's an expat. She's Irish American. You've met her. This is Rita. She's Irish American, but because she's non-Cuban citizen, she's expat resident. She managed to keep her license to run a business as a Cuban tour guide. So she's doing Cuban tours. And she's doing tours now in Honduras, Ecuador as well. So she's doing okay. But for the Cubans, it gets tough. And there's that unfairness as well, you know, that Cuban citizens can't do it, but the expats living in Cuba can. And my friend Rita sees that and she knows that and she feels horrible about it, but she has to live too. And the other odd thing regarding the difference between Cubans and tourists is all Cubans regarding face mask wearing, all Cubans over age 2 have to wear a mask all the time, outdoors and indoors, even if you're in your own car on your own or in your own car traveling with only members of your own household. You still have to wear masks, everybody. And you'll be stopped. if you don't, and you'll have people on the street pulling you up and saying, "Where's your mask?" But apparently they're dropping that rule for tourists, which again is that us and them thing that the Cuban government managed to do, and it's horrible. It's awful. And
Oh,
they're,
look,
yeah,
yeah,
it's just a horrible thing, you know. Just in order to get more tourists in, they are dropping requirement for the tourists, and the tourists are the people who would be bringing in more COVID, you know.
yeah. It's
So
almost
it's
inbuilt. I remember the early days when I first went to Cuba. It was illegal for a Cuban to actually hang out with a tourist.
mm,
You couldn't hop in the same car or taxi
yeah,
as a tourist. You couldn't go in the hotels.
yeah,
That wasn't
that's
that
right.
long ago. Cubans couldn't go in the hotels.
That's right.
I
Yeah,
remember that.
yeah, they were
You know,
changing
trying to
that.
get someone out there to the Nacional for a smoke, for a cigar in the courtyard, or going there, you'd almost have to pass a $10 note to the doorman,
That's right. Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever. But it's just
Which
a
always could
silly.
be done as well. There were always, you know, there were always doormen who were, because they look at you, you kind of know them, but there was always doormen who were quite amenable to letting friends in, you know. I can remember one of the first times meeting Hamlet. It was in the lobby of the Parque Central. And Hamlet will remember this. It was actually Hamlet's first time meeting Robin Stewart Fox. He was coming in. It was the night of the PCC party of the festival 2010, and Hamlet was passing by the Parque Central hotel where I was staying. And I was there with Stuart and Rob having a hamburger in the lobby, and Hamlet was passing by to drop off cigars to me. And they had just kind of changed the rule regarding Cubans owning cell phones and also letting Cubans into hotel lobbies. So it's still a kind of a gray area. I remember seeing Hamlet walking into the lobby. He was on 2 iPhones. And he just walked directly into the hotel lobby then with the doorman holding the door open for him. There was no problem at all. I was thinking at the time, that was one of my first times meeting Hamlet. I'm thinking, yeah, this is a guy who knows how to handle himself around here. It's just
Yeah,
kind of funny.
he has
iPhones, you know.
absolutely. What are you
Mm.
smoking, by the way?
This is a farm roll cigar that I got out in San Luis about 3 weeks ago from this new farmer who used to work for this other farmer. He used to work for Hector, but now he has his own little farm, doing his own little field of tobacco, and making very nice cigars. And
That's Miguel, yeah.
yeah, Miguel, yeah. So that's what he's doing now. He has his own little plot of land, doing a nice thing. He's got these two ensuite bedrooms out in his patch of land that he'll be doing Airbnb on. I think he's actually started, and he's also growing coffee and kind of trying things with his coffee. Some of the coffee there as well. It's very nice. But yeah, it's quite a large cigar. It's probably 56, 58 ring gauge, and it was about 7 inches long when it started. But yeah, very nice.
So you're going to smack that over the weekend, are you?
Well, this will keep me going another
Certainly
probably hour and a half.
window.
It's a good time.
Well, coming to well, you obviously went up to Pinar
Yeah,
for
on,
San
on
Luis.
the this is just a day trip that I took up. I went out on I arrived into Havana on Tuesday evening and went out on Saturday morning. I went with Punch Joe, and that was the only day he was free because he's working now. So went out on, and he normally can't do this stuff because again, as a private Cuban citizen, he can't legally be a tour guide anymore. So he'd be concerned about traveling in the car with more than one person. If there's one person in the car, it's fine because I'm just going out to Vinales with my friend, and that's fine. There's no issue there. But the cops know if he's with 3 or 4 guys in the taxi, they know he's acting as a tour guide, even if he's not being, even if he's not receiving any money, even if they are friends, it still would be a concern for him. It's just that's the way it is currently. Not being political, but that's just the way it is, and that's the way the law has gone regarding Cuban citizens acting as private tour guides. So he has to be careful of that kind of thing. So we went out on the Saturday morning, had a car, and we went out to see Salvador Carvajal first. And I hadn't seen him before. I hadn't actually met him before on his farm. And this is a guy who has been receiving tourists for quite a long time, kind of like Hector. I think he's been doing it before Hector got organized. And actually, Hector's doing it very well now, that kind of tourist receiving thing. And because he has a big, kind of a barn-shaped thing where he's got tables that would seat maybe 50, 60 people. You can have music there and that kind of stuff. So you can receive a coastload full of tourists and give them all dinner, that kind of thing. and they can buy cigars. I think this is Salvador Carvajal, who has won Habanos Man of the Year for production. I can't remember the year, but he hadn't planted yet. He was planting the week after I was there, so about 2.5 weeks ago now he was planting, and
Sorry,
he was.
so he hadn't planted in. You went in February.
Yeah, I was there. The actual the date I was there on the 20th of November, so he was planning to plant that week between the 20th and the 27th. That's the week he was planting, and yeah, he was still.
That's really late in the season not to have planted yet.
Yeah, that is late. That's at least a week or two late. Normally they can plant. So I was talking to the farmers. It kind of depends where their land is. If they're in San Luis, and if they're in San Juan y Martinez, and if the land is hit by the trade winds, and the trade winds can dry out the land faster than other bits of land. Like, the winds do make a difference to the drying out of the land. It can make a 2-week difference on when they plant. Salvador Carvajal always liked planting later, so he says. He always liked to plant up until the end of the first week in December. That's when he'd plant, which is late.
That's what I was trying to get at. It just didn't come out.
Yeah.
But, so he won't be picking until February.
Oh no, yeah, it'd be the end of February, probably early March. He would start harvesting. Yeah, which is late enough. Yeah, well, hurricane season, you know, the windy season and the potential, that stuff usually starts around April, May. Though with climate change, who knows what's happening, that they can get later or earlier, I don't know. But that's what he's old enough on the land for a long time. He's in his 70s, I'd say, at least. So I guess he knows what he's doing. This is what he's always done, and he always likes to plant Criollo 98. That's what he's planting again this year. It's something that I never really sat down and had time to look at the different strains of the tobacco and see the actual differences. I've seen pictures of the plants in the field and the different size leaves and the different amount of leaves on the plants, but I've never sat down and seen what the actual difference in the plants is. But I know Salvador Carvajal says he always likes to plant Criollo 98, which is the same. That's the same strain I know that Papo planted this year. I'm not sure what we saw Papo as well. We had lunch with him. I got a machete off him actually for this friend of mine here. He's a pharmacist, and there is a story behind why an Irish pharmacist would need a machete, but it's a long story. But
I'm sure you did bring it back carry on. Was it carry on? Was it?
Not carry on. No, not carry on. No, there'd be no hope of that. The check-in was fine. Actually, the machete we actually left on the farm afterwards. We forgot it, and then there was a lot of running around. Punch Joe did a lot of running around, even on his birthday, trying to find that machete, which had made it to Havana, but I didn't get to get it on before I got on the plane. So it's still in Cuba, but I have a spare machete here. I actually have it here behind me. I have a spare machete here for the pharmacist friend.
Yeah.
So,
but that'll keep the boys in line. Yeah, great work.
No, I have a pharmacist friend, and he gave me a load of paracetamol and ibuprofen for anybody going to Cuba. That's number 1 and 2 on the list: ibuprofen and paracetamol. And I managed to get 2,000 of each to bring out and just hand it out to various friends who I knew would be able to pass on to people who would know how to take them safely. But Cubans, like a lot of other countries, if they get a sniffle or if they get a cold or a headache, they just like taking something. And I'd been hearing that 10 ibuprofen were costing $10, which is, depending on the exchange rate, which is a week's salary at least, you know. So if a week's salary for 10 ibuprofen just shows how expensive things have got for the average Cuban. So I put over 2,000 a week. But the pharmacist friend of mine has a little farm, and he has weeds growing on the farm, and all he asked for the drugs were a machete and a bottle of rum, and I can sort it out for him. So that's a handy one. But yeah, I was with Papo, and he was planting Criollo 98 as well. And as I was saying, like I've never understood, you know, I've never got how the factories keep the flavors and the blends the same, regardless of the strain of the tobacco that's been grown. And I asked Papo this, you know, I asked him in my pidgin Spanish, because he has very little English, Papo, but I asked him, so how do the factories, you know, how do the factories maintain the same flavor, the same blend when they're receiving Criollo 98 one year and say Corojo 90 another year, and the Habano 2000 another year, and he just started laughing, and then he laughed for about 2 minutes, and then he stopped laughing, and I think that was his answer. That's all he said regarding the maintaining of the same blend, you know, throughout the different strains. But I don't know.
I think looking at the blind tasting results on FOH for 2021,
There could be something there.
Well,
I don't know. Yeah, but this is a farmer. This is really a farmer. He is a roller too, and he is a good blender of Hapo, but he's a farmer. And I know farmers have always taken a very different view on crop. Most farmers would take a very different view on crops. From talking to Hector years and years ago, and the different farmers, really, the bottom line for them is the weight of the tobacco grown on the farm, because that's how they're paid. You know, and there's a saying with Cuban farmers, peso is pesos, that the weight is money, basically. You know, that the more leaves that they sell to Tabacuba, then the more money that they make. So that's what's important for them. So if they get the right strain for the right weather conditions, they'll get more leaves, more usable leaves, and then they make more money. And that's really what they're interested in. Now, certainly some farmers, you know, the likes of Hector and the likes of Hirochi and the grandfather Alejandro before him and the other farmers would be interested in the quality too. Absolutely, 100%. But really, when it comes down to their bottom line, how they pay their workers, because they all have to have staff, they all have to have guys out doing the work in the fields. They can't do it all themselves. How they pay their guys is by the weight of the tobacco that they sell. So that's what they have to.
Yeah. It's no different to grapes. Yeah, table grapes. It's really just basically on yield. But I've always found it fascinating, Andy, that you could ask three different farm owners the same question and get three completely different answers.
Yeah.
And often different answer the next year you ask the same question, you get a different answer again.
That's one of the things that I've always said about Cuba, because I find that all over the place, and I've always said that you could ask the same question 100 times and you get 100 different answers, but 50 of those could be right, because things change all the time, you know. And what was correct one year will be totally different than the next year. And that's all walks, that's all areas of Cuban life and Cuban experience. It's not just farming. But I suppose Cuban tobacco farming, it's a very specific thing. If you go from San Juan y Martinez to San Luis to Corojo, and they're all very, very near each other, within 20 kilometers. It's kind of triangle. But San Luis is nearer the coast, so they get more of the trade winds, and the land dries out quicker. And even on the same farm, you will have a different yield depending on the fields that the tobacco is grown in. If it's down in a hollow near water, it's getting more moisture. It'll be cooler at nighttime, maybe warmer during the day. And you'll have farmers who are fifth generation on that same land, and they will know exactly where the best yield, where the field that has the best yield is. So it's I can understand that. Like it is more specific than a lot of other types of farming. It's in some ways maybe similar to vineyards, where you'd have one field on one side of the road that'll have a completely different type of yield to a field on a different side of the road, depending on the slope of the land, or the rainfall, or the sunshine, or the frost in the evening, whatever it is. So there is a kind of a specificity, to use the word, regarding Cuban tobacco growing that I can understand, and because I've heard the same kind of thing from enough farmers, you know, that it's probably true. I'm not just making it up. You know?
No, it's good. Did you get any intel as to what last year's crop was like, or I mean, this year's is too early to tell, obviously, but look, the weather looks to be fairly,
The only farmer that I really spoke to about, actually two of them, I spoke to Salvador about that, and to Hector, and they were both happy with the yield, with the deal that they got last February, March, even though they said it was difficult because of COVID. It was hard to get workers, hard to get staff working, not because they had COVID, but because there was a kind of a lockdown going on, but even outdoors, but they managed to get the harvest in, and they said that it was a good harvest. And they're expecting this is so far, it's still very early, of course, but because of the weather, they're hoping this will be a good harvest too. But they're saying that the harvest this year was, when I say this year, this last February, March, they're saying that was better than the last 3 years, which are also good. But they're saying that the one this year was actually better. So happy with that, yeah. That's all good. What they're not happy with is that they're being paid late. They're not being paid on time. But I know one of the farmers got paid just the week before I was there, and some of the other farmers had said that they weren't actually paid yet for this year's harvest. So that's 8-9 months in.
Well, I've heard some of them are being underpaid as well.
Yeah,
in
that's
terms
happening too.
Yeah.
That's happening too, and I've seen even it's what's interesting now is I've seen news reports for that. I've seen Cuban source news reports in this, so it's actually making Cuban news, which is very interesting. It's very odd that the farmers are being underpaid, that they're not happy, and that they're turning to crops other than tobacco, just in order to eat, in order to to grow food and to survive. Hector, for example, when I first saw him, I think he had 16 hectares or maybe less, but now he has 62 hectares. So he has his own farm. He's leased some other land. He's got rice paddies now. So he's now doing his own rice. He's doing all kinds of animals, and he's doing sweet corn. He's doing tomatoes. He was always doing pineapples. He's doing more pineapples now. So yeah, lots of different crops Hector's doing, as well as the tobacco, because of course he's doing lunches there for the tourists when the tourists come back, and he has
makes so much sense.
Yeah, he's actually making more money now from the tourists and from the lunches and the cigars that he can sell them than he is by selling the tobacco to To Cuba, which is a shame, but maybe another example of the difficulties that the Cuban economy is having currently for whatever reason. There's all kinds of reasons there, and the farmers were very, very happy to give their thoughts on why this was happening, but we probably shouldn't go on about that too much. But it's just
so coming back to, I was going to say, coming back to Havana, you stayed obviously at Casa Particular. How are they coping? How have they coped over this past 12, 18 months?
I really can't imagine. In some ways, the Cuban government has done something in that there was a time when all private business owners weren't, they had to pay tax regardless of their income. So they had to pay a certain amount. Even if they were making no income, they had to pay tax. And I think partially is because the Cuban government, the idea of tax is quite a new thing. And I've got a good story about that actually, but the idea of paying tax and how tax should be paid and should be managed and how revenue should work, it's quite new to them. So they weren't understanding really that if you charge tax on a small business that has no income, that's going to be the end of the business very, very quickly. So they have changed that now, and now small businesses like the Casa Particular owners, they're only paying tax on income that they do receive. And that's quite a recent change. So at least they've done that. Now, on the other hand, they've had no tourists. There's been nobody in. Well, there's been some tours. There's always been, throughout the whole thing, there's been some tourism. Very, very small amounts because of how strict the quarantine was and all that kind of thing. I know some Casa Particular owners. One of them, for example, has her place. She has a 2-bedroom place near the American Embassy in Vedado that she just got finished just before the pandemic hit. But she has that place rented out to some Peruvian medical students. So there are always kind of South American, Latin American medical students coming into Cuba, and they have to live somewhere, and they live somewhere cheap. They'll stay in the hotels. But they'd be paying kind of local rates. They'd be local long-term rates. So maybe 5 to 10% of what she would be making if she could rent the place out to tourists. But at least the place is rented out, and there's some money coming in. But for the other Casa Particular owners, I have no idea. Most of the small business owners that I know in Cuba have been living on savings, or they've got local jobs. And the average salary from talking to different people, the average salary is about 2,400 pesos a month. For example, 2,400 pesos a month. If you go to Espacios, that's 6 pizzas. So that's what that gets you. If you go to Hotel Nacional, it gets you 24 beers. So that's what your salary is. A lot of people that I spoke to, they're paying more now on their electricity bill than they make per month from their salary. So everybody is on the scrounge. Everybody is trying to make money some other way, or they're leaving, or they're planning on leaving. So while it's not so bad for tourists going in, there's been changes, but it's not so bad. You can get by if you have a friend that you can change money with. Some things, as I was saying, some things are cheaper. But for the average Cuban, it's kind of disastrous. Everybody that I spoke to between age 20 and 50, they, they just want to leave. They don't see any other option. They're
Leaving. I
all,
mean, we both know the brain drain that's going on or has gone
yeah,
on and continues to go on.
yeah,
It's remarkable.
yeah. It's much worse now than any time I've seen it. I presume it was worse in the special period, 91 to 93, 94. I presume it was worse then. I think it was. But it's very close to being that bad now. They're not quite going hungry yet. I know some people are. I think I know of a Cuban man living in London who had to move back home to Cuba because his aged mother had nobody to go queue up to buy food for her, and she was too old and sick to go queue up herself. So she's literally starving. So the son, who was working in London, had to move home to Cuba just to go shopping for her, just to feed her. Uh, I know of my Cuban friends, they'd be getting up at 5 in the morning, going out to the local market. And the first 100 people get a ticket, and the first 100 people can then shop. One example, this friend of mine, she was out from 5 a.m. The store opened 9:30, and she was number 78. So she was hoping that there'd be something left by the time she got there. And this is a daily thing. So the family members take turns queuing. There's a new industry out there, which was in New York for years and years, buying, say, Broadway tickets. But there's a new industry of people, of these professional queuers, these professional people who will stand in line for you. So you pay somebody else to go out and queue for you. Of course, that's fine if you have the money, but it's generally only the more well off who can do that. Or if people are sick and they can't queue, that's going to eat into savings very quickly. So it's getting like that. And then there's the MLCs, there's the MLC stores. So if you have access to hard currency, to US dollars or to Canadian dollars or to euros, if you have friends living in those countries who can send you money, or if you have savings in those currencies, you can have a credit card. Well, it's kind of a debit card. So you can put money on the debit card. And the MLC is Moneda Libremente Convertible. So it's freely convertible money. Basically, that's the MLC. So which is hard currency. Basically, it's just another term for hard currency. But the MLC amounts on the cards, they'd always be US dollars. So you can use them, for example, in the La Casa del Habanos to buy cigars, but of course there are no Cubans doing that, or just about no Cubans doing that. But there are lots of shops that have opened up that will sell products, food products, rice, oil, beans, a bit of chicken, kind of pork, maybe fish, the kind of staples that you can buy in the MLC stores. There would be people who have those cards buying those products and then sell them on the black market at 100% markup, maybe 200% markup, because they can get beer and they can get rum and they can get various things. And there's always somebody who wants to have the party, who wants to have something. They can't get beer, they can't get rum, or they can't get cooking oil, or they can't get sugar or rice, and they go to the black market to buy from people who have access to the MLC card. So this is another kind of black market business. There was always black market going on.
Did you get to an MLC store?
Yeah, well, no, actually, the only one that I saw was with the cigar shops, and you do have Cuban people going into the cigar shops to buy coffee. As we know, I think that there is a coffee shortage going on, but most of the cigar shops happen to have Cubita. Now I think it was $14 for half kilo bag, a lot of money. But there were some Cubans going in and buying coffee with the MLC cards in the cigar shops. I saw it happen in the Hotel Comodoro cigar shop and in the Melia Havana. You can go in and buy coffee. For a while during lockdown, I was told by friends living there that the Hotel Nacional became like a giant supermarket. That if you wanted beer or rum or bottles of water, you would go to the Hotel Nacional and you would buy water, beer, rum from the Hotel Nacional with the MLC card. That's changed now. I was there one Sunday. The Hotel Nacional had no beer and no cola. So there was no beer. There was no Cuba Libre. There was no Cubata. They had sparkling water, so you could have mojito. Lemonade. That was about it. That was what you could get on the patio. There was just no beer. I've never known the Hotel Nacional to run out of beer. It's a very odd one. It's odd. Yeah, the supply chain is just collapsed. You know, it's all you go to the same restaurant 2 or 3 times, and they'll have a different beer every time because they just have the beer that their shopper person was able to find that day.
They get
So
what they can get.
they will get what they can get. Yeah. So they're getting the stuff Claro. I think it's Dominican, maybe Nicaraguan. I'm not sure. There's Presidente, which is Dominican, which has been available in Cuba off and on for a few years now. Sometimes Cristal, sometimes Bucanero. Lots of places now, for some reason, have Stella Artois, this Belgian beer. So yeah, it just depends on the day. They will have the beer that they have, whatever they can get hold of. It's all over the place.
Take us through the cigar store story. What are the stores? What was the stock levels? What are they missing? What are they holding? What's the pricing? And what do you have to pay in?
The pricing is really still very close to the price list that's up on the web, that Youth Cigar price list.
Yeah.
Still very close to that. There might be some differences here and there, but all the cigars I looked at were all fairly similar. The stock levels, I was in 4 or 5 shops. I was in the shop in the Melia Havana, where the roller Arnaldo Ovales is now working. And I was in the Melia Havana, I was in the Comodoro. I was in Club Havana, and I was in the Romeo and Julieta shop. Partagas is obviously closed down because they're refitting out the new shop. Palacio de Artesania is closed down. Part of that building fell in, kind of like Partagas, so that's closed down. Some of the staff have moved to the shop in La Cabana Fort, where Cueto is rolling. And the Hotel Melia Cohiba is closed until February, they say, for refurbishment, and there is work going on. They have a small shop opened up at the back of the hotel, but it's really small. It's much smaller than the main shop that they had up on the first floor of the Melia Cohiba. And the Conde de Villanueva is also closed down. At least it was closed in the afternoon I was there. And that place never closed in the past, so I presume it's kind of closed at the moment. But the stock in the shops is actually pretty good. Like it's much better than anywhere in Europe. They have a lot of stock in the shops. There was very few lines I could think of that they didn't have except Cohiba. And I can't remember seeing any Trinidad Fundadores. I saw no Trinidad La Trova, but I saw lots of the Medio the Media Luna and the Trinidad Topaz and the Esmeralda, I think is what I saw. But there was.
We're getting plenty of Media Luna. We're getting some Topaz, some Esmeralda. We're not getting any Fundadores currently. Lots of Coloniales. That's all good. Did you see any Punch DC or?
I saw Hoyo DC. I saw boxes of 25 Punch DC. I can't remember seeing boxes of 50 Punch. I can't remember if they still make a box of 50 Punch DC. I'm nearly sure I saw a cabinet of 50 Hoyo DC. And I saw cabinets of 50 Partagas Lusitanias.
Yeah.
And which are rare on the international market, but they have them in Cuba. The one market, of course, that they were low on everywhere was Cohiba. I saw Cohiba Siglo 1 and Siglo 2 in the Havana Libre and in the Romeo and Julieta shop. And I saw a partial box of Cohiba Bejique 56 in the Havana Libre. And the Club Havana had a couple of boxes of the Pyramides Extra. I didn't buy one of those, but they had some of those, and they're quite well priced in Cuba. They're about $313, I think, for the box of 10. The prices, I said, haven't really gone up, but I did see. I was quite surprised to see lots of boxes of the Punch La Isla, which is the Cuban regional from 2018. There was lots of boxes of those around, and still lots of boxes of the San Cristobal La Cabana, which was the Cuban regional from 2019. Though they really.
So we talked about. Did you flip them over and check the date codes on those? Are they older boxes? Or are they just being produced now?
Yeah, there was all of the La Isla that I saw, they were all 2018, and the La Cabana that I saw, they were 2019, somewhere early 2020. But they were released very, very late 2019, and they only really came on the market. It's still hard to find.
Like a tourist,
Sorry, what's that?
So they would have released those pretty much just before the height of COVID in Cuba.
Yeah, just before the start of that. Yeah. There was there were some boxes available. I think I might have got a box in November 2019, but I know I got a couple more boxes in February 2020 when there were kind of more available. But then most of that batch I think got released after March last year, which is when COVID had hit. So there are still quite a few of those. There are still quite a few of those.
So all prices are in US dollars, Andy.
All prices US dollars, yeah.
US
I don't
dollars,
know
yeah.
how they're
And
managing that because
they won't take cash payment.
yeah, I don't know. Like, I have no problem at all buying because I have my Visa card, which is issued by an Irish bank. Even though the Irish bank has connections with the US and they won't issue me Cuban travel insurance, but they have no problem. I had no problem using this Irish bank's Visa card. It was fine. Normally with odd purchases, I'd get a text message saying, "Do you confirm this is you?" But that wasn't happening when I was in Cuba. But it was fine. It wasn't a problem at all. Prices are in US dollars. There were some rumors going around. I think I mentioned this before. There were some rumors going around that while the prices were in US dollars, you'd be charged the euro amount of that number. So, for example, Punch La Isla, $120. You'd buy a box of those, but you'd be charged 120 euro. I know that wasn't happening because I was checking my bank statements on the internet when I was paying after I paid just to see what was happening. And I was paying US dollars. That was all fine. But I have no idea how Americans will be doing it. And some Americans that I should have asked, but I could ask. There was one American man that I met in a restaurant. He was from Georgia. He'd been in Cuba a while. He wasn't buying cigars, but he'd been using his Chase Manhattan Visa card to buy PCR tests and that kind of thing. Now, there's a possibility that there's a humanitarian / medical exemption for the PCR test for that kind of thing. I'm not sure, but he had no problem at all using his Chase Manhattan Visa card. So I don't know.
We've got a fair few US members in Cuba at the moment and the last couple of weeks, and they seem to have no issues purchasing
Okay, good.
cigars in Varadero and elsewhere. So I assume it's okay. Would you recommend? I mean, I think you're talking about heading back in February, but would you recommend members to visit now? Would you what qualifications would you put on that?
I'd be slow to recommend because who knows what's going to happen with the new variant, with the Omicron variant, and who knows what's going to happen regarding quarantine. If somebody travels to Cuba now, if they buy a trip now, by the time they fly, they might have reinstated a 7 or 10 day quarantine that they'll have to pay for themselves. I don't know. What I do know is that most of the European airlines anyway are offering free cancellation with the full refund or the free postponement of the flights, so the free changing of the flights. I know that's what Air France are offering, and that was one of the incentives for me to book the trip when the festival was announced. Now the festival's been cancelled, of course, but I have the trip booked, but I can get a full refund on that, and that would be the way for most of the European airlines. For the American airlines, all I see are the prices that some of the American airlines are charging for a trip to Cuba. I know there aren't many flights yet from the US. There are more and more, I think, every week. But I saw somebody just today was quoted $1,400 to fly US. I'm not sure if it was just a single leg, or if they had a second leg in that trip. But that's a lot of money. That's way more than you pay from Europe to Cuba.
You touched on something. Sorry, Andy. You touched on something before in terms of travel insurance. It's a requirement to enter Cuba to have travel insurance.
Yeah.
Did you have any difficulty getting travel insurance?
Not
Health
here.
insurance.
Yeah, not with me. I travel. I travel with full. I think it's called platinum travel insurance. It's issued by an Irish company that use a Spanish bank, I think, to back it up. But the insurance company, it's called Insure and Go, and they have an Irish website, insureandgo.ie. But they have a lot of different European websites. I just get the travel insurance yearly, so I have yearly travel insurance for the whole family, and that's yearly platinum. It'll cover us up to $10 million $10 million medical expenses and all kinds of other stuff, and also Cuba as well. Absolutely, because some travel companies won't cover Cuba, and that'll be in the small print somewhere, but this company does. And I pay 167 euros a year for that for the whole family. So when we go to Spain as a whole family, when we travel anywhere, the whole family, we're all covered in that. And I think that's pretty good. That's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I do exactly the same, but I've noticed that Cuba has come on the fine print recently in terms
yeah. Usually, if you go on the internet and have a look at some of the Spanish companies, because there are some out there. There are Spanish insurance companies that will do that, and that's what I use. But they have an Irish website, so it's handy enough.
It's good advice.
But if you can't get travel insurance going, really, to be honest, I've traveled to Cuba probably 15 times since that travel insurance requirement came in. Actually more. I think that came in around 2011, 2012. And there's the option to buy travel insurance there when you land if you can't get any. And I think that's about $30, maybe $30 or $40, which is fine if you can't get any. There's an option to get some. Now, I've never seen where that option is paid for. And having said that, I've never had anybody, when I land in Cuba, I've never had anyone ask me to show the travel insurance, except maybe the very first time when I went in after it came in. Was still new.
I was asked once, Andy, once in my travels, and then again, that was just after they introduced the requirement, but certainly not since.
Yeah, not since then. Yeah, they will always have it because it makes sense to have travel insurance when you go to Cuba, because anything could happen, and you're.
I've taken people to hospital there more than a couple of times. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
And you definitely want to have some form of insurance.
Yeah.
To not spend 2 days working out the paperwork that's required, alone the financial cost that they'll make up on the spot. So,
but the thing is as well, what can happen in Cuba too, and it's as common as anything else, is that the flights get cancelled, the flights get delayed. You just stay in a hotel, another hotel, whatever, all this stuff that can happen really very often as well. And travel insurance will cover that. It's one of the things that is handy. Now the airline should be covering it too, but it's no harm to have a backup.
No. So wrapping up, I mean, to be fair, if we've got members, viewers who are looking at going to Cuba, maybe hold off for a month or so, 2 months, and see the lie of the land.
I would hate to be the one telling people not to go, because to be honest, I had a great time. I had a really great time, and I wish I'd had more time there, because there's a load of people that I didn't get to see.
You had a great time in a phone box.
Well, it was just I did have it was a really nice time. It was great seeing those people again that I hadn't seen in a year and a half, and just getting out and meeting them, and it was a great time. But there are very, very few tourists there. Not half the hotels are closed, but not far off. Half of them are probably closed. A lot of the restaurants we'd know about would be closed. Like in the bars, the Floriditas closed. Much of the restaurants and bars in Havana Vieja are closed. Some places are open, but they're closing early. So in Old Havana, the bars are now closing at around 11 p.m. rather than midnight. If you go to say Vedado, where they would be open normally until 4 or 5 in the morning, they're closing at kind of 2 and 3. The Gato Tuerto is closed. They have a big piece of plywood over the front windows, so somebody must have thrown in the front window, but that's closed anyway.
Where do you now go at 4 o'clock in the morning, Andy? I mean, where did you head off to?
Well, there's still what I would do normally is I'd go into either Havana Vieja or Central Havana to have dinner. That would finish up around 11 o'clock, kind of 12 o'clock. And then there's a couple of hours between dinner and kind of going out, which you only go out about 2 in the morning. So you go to Espacios, which isn't really going out. So kind of Espacios is kind of pre-drinks. It's kind of after dinner drinks and pre-going out drinks. But it's always a very handy spot. But that's the place to go to.
We're about 1:30 now. Oh.
Yeah, well, about midnight, maybe 12:30. Yeah, that should end up in Espacios, and that's a really nice spot, and that's when there are people there. Stay there until about 2:33, and then head out. You would try Mio Tio, but there's nothing happening Mio Tio. It used to be a great night there any night of the week. There would always be a bit of fun there with the staff. That's another thing. The bar staff have left. They're all of an age. They're just gone. So there's one security guy now that I still know in Mio Tio. I used to know all of those guys really well. One guy there that I still know. One bartender there that I know. All the other staff have all left. And the same in LAMA, where I knew the staff and the door staff. There's one guy there again that I still know. There's of that age group where they're either in like in Nicaragua or Mexico or trying to get up to the States somehow. That's where they are now. They just left. All of that age group is gone. But yeah, to get back to where to go to after Spacios, about 2:30 in the morning. If it's weeknight, if it's weekend, sorry, Friday, Saturday, probably me or Theo or Shangri-La. The other thing is about Shangri-La, it's very indoors. So regarding COVID and that kind of thing, I didn't really go there. I was there briefly on this trip, but I had promised my wife that there was stay to outdoor venues, which I'm happy to do because it just makes sense when there's still a pandemic going on, and it's easy to do in Cuba as well. So you stick to outdoor venues. All my meals were all outdoors. All the nightclubs were all outdoors. There were roofs, but they had 4 open walls, that kind of thing. But the place to go now, and it's been there for the last couple of years. There's a series of 7 or 9 kind of beach bars at this address in Western Miramar Playa. It's Primera, which is First Avenue, and Setenta, which is 70th Street. So just beside the Hotel Panorama, which has been there a long time, and they're building a new hotel beside that. On the beach there's about 9 bars. One of them is owned by the owner of Espacios, actually, called Muelle 70. But these bars, they're kind of 2-story bars, and they look like they're made from shipping containers with these bits added on. But they're actually quite nice, some of them, and they stay open 24 hours a day. So you can get there at 3 in the morning, and the place is just starting, and there can be good music, actually great music going, and quite reasonably priced drinks out there as well. It's not bad. We'd normally buy a bottle. We were buying bottles of Selection de Maestro and like 6 Cokes, bucket of ice, and that would come to about 30-35 euro, which is cheaper than the bottle of Selection de Maestro is in the cigar shops. So that's fine. And for 6 people, that's 2 hours drinking, which is fine. So there wasn't much drinking, but just that we had a drink with us. We had a nice drink. So it was nice. So yeah, that was reasonable enough. There were some nights there you'd be there until 7:30, see the sunrise, which is really nice. See the sun come up, and there's some music going on, and then they start doing breakfasts. Then they clean up a bit. You can get lunch there if you want, and they do dinner there if you want, and then they start the disco again, and they go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
You never actually stayed there till breakfast, did you? Or did you actually?
I didn't have breakfast there, but yeah, I was there. I think the latest that I left was probably 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
That's reasonable enough. Yeah, it's reasonable hours.
8 o'clock in the morning. You're back out by 12, aren't you?
Yeah, I have this thing where I can't really sleep when I go to Cuba. So I normally get to bed at 7:30, 8 in the morning, and I'm up and out again by 10:30, 11. Yeah, I'd be out again. I get 2 or 3 hours sleep a night.
And 11 in the morning.
It's 11 in the morning. Yeah, I'm out again.
Yeah.
I just don't. And then the odd day, 1 or 2 days a week, I'll get 5 hours sleep, which really refreshes me. That helps. But I just can't. I can't sleep. I'm just out because I like being out, and it's that fear of missing out thing as well. I'd hate to miss something. It's like life.
Absolutely.
Andy,
on behalf of all our members, on behalf of the Cuban cigar community, really, thank you. You've brought us up to speed. You brought us up to speed, and you've done it in such a wonderful way. I feel like I'm back there. I can't wait to get back there.
It's still a lovely country, lovely people. It's a bit more difficult now in lots of ways. It's a little bit more difficult for tourists. It's much harder for Cubans living there. There's no comparison. I could never say I know what it's like to be Cuban. I could never say that, but I know it's harder now than it was. But I still recommend going if you're willing to take the risk of the restrictions changing, that kind of thing, because of variants. If you're willing to take that risk, depending what your airline offers you, the kind of terms that you get from the airline, I'd absolutely recommend it. You can have a great time. But having said that, who knows what's going to happen with the quarantine and all that stuff.
Well, great stuff, mate. I look forward to being in Cuba with you again.
Yeah, hopefully soon. That would be fun.
Much appreciated, mate. Thanks for joining us.
Good to talk to you. Take care. Talk to you very soon. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.